So if you were tasked with explaining the invisible concept of gravity to someone who had completely never experienced it, you probably wouldn't start by, scrawling complex mathematical equations on a whiteboard.
Right. You definitely wouldn't just dive into math and theoretical physics right out of the gate.
Exactly. I mean, you would just point to a dropped apple hitting the floor. You would point to the way a coffee cup shatters when it slips off a table.
Yeah, you anchor the abstract concept in immediate visceral reality. The impact proves the presence of the force.
You explain the invisible force by showing the undeniable physical impact it has on the world we can actually see. And, well, welcome to the deep dive.
We know you're here because you want to gain that deep, thorough knowledge without, drowning in a sea of information overload.
Yeah, we want to cut through the noise. And today, our source material is a single, just deeply poetic text from Sikh scripture that applies that that falling apple strategy to the concept of spiritual enlightenment.
It's a really fascinating approach.
It really is. We are looking at a composition by Guru Arjan Dev Ji, and it's specifically categorized as Rag Sorat'h, 613. It's titled The Divine Devotion of the Inner Searcher.
And our mission today is to basically unpack how this text uses these gritty, relatable, and honestly sometimes uncomfortable human obsessions to explain the architecture of divine love.
Right, because it doesn't hold back. But before we get into those gritty details, we need to quickly ground ourselves in what we're actually looking at here.
Yeah, totally. So to appreciate the weight of this text, Guru Arjan Dev Ji was the 5th Sikh guru living in the 16th and early 17th centuries.
Okay.
And he was like a master synthesizer of spiritual thought. He was largely responsible for compiling the first official edition of the Sikh scripture.
Which is a massive undertaking.
Whoa, absolutely. And the thing is, he understood human psychology on a profound level.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that this is categorized as Rag Sorat'h.
Right.
So it's really important to know that a rag is a specific musical framework or a scale in classical Indian music.
So this isn't just like a dry essay you read in a library.
Exactly. It's not meant to be read silently at all. It is literally designed to be sung.
I love that. So the music is doing the emotional heavy lifting before the intellectual argument even really begins.
That's exactly it. The specific mood of Rag Sorat'h is meant to evoke a feeling of seeking. It's this gentle but very persistent yearning.
Oh, well.
Yeah, so before a single word of theology is even processed by your brain, your nervous system is already being primed by the music to feel a sense of longing.
That is so smart. It sets this emotional baseline.
It does. And once that baseline is set, the text begins its exploration of human focus. And, well, it starts with some highly aggressive worldly examples.
It really does. I mean, the text sets up a series of analogies right out of the gate.
Right.
It states that a king is entangled in kingly affairs. An egotist is entangled in his own egotism. A greedy man is enticed by greed, and an addict is addicted to his drugs.
Yeah, those are heavy.
Very heavy. And then it takes all of those intense states of being, and it equates them to how a spiritually enlightened being is absorbed in the love of the Lord.
Which is jarring, and it's jarring on purpose.
Okay, wait, because I am honestly struggling with this a bit. I mean, greed and addiction literally destroy people.
Yeah, they do.
We watch addiction tear families apart, and we see greed corrupt entire societies. So why would a sacred text use the mechanics of self-destruction to explain holy enlightenment? That just feels deeply contradictory.
I get that. And that friction you're feeling right now, that is entirely intentional.
Really?
Yes. The text is forcing us to strip away our moral judgment of the object of the obsession just for a moment.
Okay.
So we can examine the raw mechanics of the obsession itself. Like, let's look at the psychology and the neurochemistry of an addict.
Right.
An addict doesn't just casually pencil in a window to use their drug on a Sunday afternoon, if the weather is nice.
No, of course not. It's not a hobby.
Exactly. Their craving bypasses logic entirely. It hijacks the brain's survival and reward systems. Their entire reality, their waking thoughts, their physical urges, all of it revolves around securing that drug.
It's completely involuntary.
Yeah.
Like they lose their free will to the pursuit.
Yes. And the text is arguing that true spiritual devotion requires that exact same level of involuntary, all-consuming focus.
Oh, wow. So it's about the intensity.
Right. The enlightened being doesn't treat God like a weekend hobby or, some cultural obligation. The devotion has hijacked their system in the same way.
That makes so much sense.
And look at the other examples, too. A king entangled in kingly affairs isn't just, like, sitting on a throne relaxing.
Right. A monarch's brain is probably wired in a constant state of hypervigilance.
Exactly. They are constantly managing threats, alliances, power dynamics, or the greedy man, his baseline dopamine release is tied exclusively to the endless acquisition of wealth.
It makes me think about our own smartphone habits,
Oh, that's a great comparison.
right? Because we all have that involuntary twitch to pull our phones out of our pockets when we're, like, at a red light or standing in an elevator.
You don't even realize you're doing it half the time.
Exactly. We don't consciously decide to do it. Our brains are just desperately hungering for that microdose of stimulation.
Yes.
And the text is pointing to that level of helpless, automatic fixation. It's taking the most intense tunnel vision a human can experience and saying, hey, this is what spiritual absorption actually feels like.
Yeah, well put. But the text is also aware of the destructive nature of those first examples.
Which is good, because otherwise it sounds terrifying.
Right, exactly. That is why it doesn't stop there. Because if it only used the addict and the greedy man, we might conclude that spiritual devotion is like a sort of cosmic sickness.
A disease you catch.
Exactly. So the composition pivots. It moves from these external, culturally constructed obsessions to a second wave of analogies.
Okay, what are those?
Well, these ones are completely innocent, innate, and biological.
Oh, right. The text introduces a landlord in love with his land, a scholar absorbed in scholarship, and a baby attached to its milk.
Yeah, this progression systematically maps the entire human experience.
How so?
While the landlord represents our grounding in the physical earth, material sustenance, the scholar represents the highest peak of our cognitive intellectual drive, the hunger to actually understand the universe.
But I feel like the most powerful of the three is the baby.
Oh, unquestionably.
Because, the newborn baby crying for milk changes the entire tone of the poem. When a CEO builds an empire, or like a scholar spends decades researching a book, there's ego involved.
Tons of ego.
Right, there is a conscious, structured drive. Right. But a baby crying for milk has zero calculation. A newborn doesn't have an ego or, a 5-year strategy.
No, it just has biology.
Right.
A baby's drive for milk is the absolute purest manifestation of the mammalian survival instinct. The infant's body understands that without the milk, it ceases to exist. By placing the spiritually enlightened saint next to the crying infant, Guru Arjan Dev Ji is framing divine love not as a theological chore,
but as a basic, non-negotiable biological necessity for the soul.
Exactly. The saint doesn't have to strain to love God any more than a baby has to be convinced to want nourishment.
The soul requires the divine just to survive the day.
Yeah.
That's such a beautiful way to frame it. The analogies are really building a complete picture here.
They really are.
Because the addict shows us the relentless, involuntary intensity, the scholar shows us the intellectual absorption, and the baby shows us the pure, innocent biological necessity.
Yep, you've got all angles covered.
But it makes me wonder if this devotion is as innate as a bodily function. How does the text say it physically manifests? Because, most spiritual traditions focus really heavily on denying the body or escaping the physical world entirely.
Yeah, that's a very common trope, but this composition actually leans heavily into the physical body. Yeah, it points directly to our sensory organs to explain the action of devotion. It describes the eyes being happy to see and the tongue savoring tastes.
That is so grounded in the flesh.
It is, and it compares these immediate sensory experiences to how a humble servant sings the glorious praises of the Lord, which is an action the text refers to as kirtan.
Okay, the physical act of singing. Because kirtan isn't like silent meditation in a dark room. It requires breath, vocal cords, vibration, and hearing. It is a full-body sensory experience.
Exactly. The text is totally dismantling the barrier between the physical and the spiritual.
Wow.
Think about the analogy of the tongue-savoring tastes. Like, when you eat a delicious meal, you don't intellectualize the flavor.
No, you just taste it.
Right. The saltiness or sweetness hits your taste buds, and the satisfaction is immediate. It's unmediated. You don't have to wait until you die to experience the joy of the meal.
Yeah, the joy is occurring in the exact millisecond the food touches the tongue. The text uses a specific phrase in the pause section which, by the way, is the central thematic anchor of the composition.
Right, the core message.
It talks about beholding the Lord near at hand. And I feel like that phrasing really pushes back against the way many of us were taught to think about religion.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we were usually sold this narrative of a distant deity, right?
Oh.
God is on a mountaintop or in the clouds, and you are just stuck down in the muddy valley, hoping your prayers travel far enough to be heard.
Yeah, that distant, untouchable figure. But near at hand completely collapses that distance.
It makes it intimate.
It does. The text argues that the enlightened person experiences the divine with the same undeniable crashing immediacy as light hitting the retina or, flavor hitting the tongue.
Right.
The divine isn't some abstract concept to be studied in a book. It is a present tense reality to be consumed. The singing of curtain brings them profound satisfaction because they are interacting with a presence that is right in front of them.
They aren't leaving a voicemail for the cosmos. They're in an active, face-to-face dialogue.
That's a perfect way to put it. And actually, the neuropsychology of mindfulness mirrors this perfectly.
Oh, really? How so?
Well, when a person is deeply engaged in chanting or singing, their brain waves physically shift. The default mode network, which is the part of the brain responsible for ruminating on the past or worrying about the future, it just quiets down.
It shuts off the anxiety.
Basically, yeah. They become entirely anchored in the present sensory moment. The text recognized centuries ago that spiritual fulfillment cannot exist in the past or the future.
Right.
It only exists near at hand in the immediate now.
Which brings us to the climax of the source material. We have unpacked all of these different states of being.
Yeah.
The king managing his power.
Yep.
The baby needing its milk. The tongue craving flavor. The addict chasing the high. And when you strip away all the specifics, every single one of those analogies is simply a different flavor of one core human experience.
Hunger.
Exactly. Hunger.
Hunger is the driving engine of the human machine.
It really is.
Yeah.
And the text delivers its ultimate thesis on how the universe processes that engine. It states, and I quote, "As is the hunger, so is the fulfiller. He is the Lord and master of all hearts."
That line is incredible.
It concludes with Nanak, who is the founder of the Sikh faith, and whose spiritual lineage guru Arjan Devji is continuing here, thirsting for the blessed vision of the Lord's darshan.
Right.
And it describes the resulting meeting with God, who's named in the text as the inner knower, the searcher of hearts.
As is the hunger, so is the fulfiller. I mean, this is perhaps one of the most profound psychological and theological statements in the entire scripture.
Just so loaded.
It is. It suggests a universe that operates on a principle of absolute, unflinching reciprocity. The fulfiller, which is kind of like the divine mechanism of reality, simply matches the vibration of your deepest craving.
Let's actually apply that to the listener's daily life for a second. The text is arguing that you ultimately get exactly what you are genuinely hungry for. So if your deepest internal drive is for status and power, your reality will literally become a labyrinth of kingly affairs and stressful alliances.
Yeah, build your own trap.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If your deepest drive is for material acquisition, your reality becomes bound to the dirt, just like the landlord. The universe just provides the matching reality to your internal state.
And that's where the titles Inner Knower and Searcher of Hearts become the crucial linchpin here.
Because it knows what you really want.
Exactly. Humans are incredibly skilled at lying to ourselves and others about what we actually want.
Oh, completely.
Like, we might volunteer at a charity and tell everyone, oh, I'm just hungry to help the world. But if the inner knower searches our heart and finds that our actual bedrock hunger is just for social praise and ego validation,
Ouch.
right, then the fulfiller will deliver an experience entangled in egotism. The divine mechanism bypasses our spoken words completely and responds exclusively to the raw, unvarnished truth of our internal craving.
So you cannot hack the system.
Yes.
You cannot fake the hunger. The fulfiller only feeds the genuine appetite.
Yep, you can't trick it. Nanak's specific hunger, as described at the end of the text, was for darshan.
And what does that mean exactly in this context?
In the Sikh tradition, darshan is the blessed vision, or like the experiential glimpse of the divine presence. Nanak wasn't hungry for power or land or, intellectual dominance.
Right.
He had the innocent biological thirst of the newborn baby, but directed entirely toward experiencing God. Because that was his true, undeniable hunger, the fulfiller responded in kind. The hunger was met with the presence.
Wow. We started this deep dive talking about gravity. how you explain an invisible force by pointing to the things it pulls down.
Yeah, the dropped apple.
Exactly. And this text by Guru Arjan Dev Ji does the exact same thing for the human soul. It takes us on a tour of our own gravitational pulls.
It really does.
We see the destructive orbit of the addict. We see the natural, innocent orbit of the infant. We see the immediate sensory orbit of our own eyes and tongues.
The text is basically holding up a mirror to the mechanics of human attention. It proves that we are all fundamentally devoted to something. We are all deeply, helplessly absorbed in some kind of pursuit.
Everybody worships something.
Right. The only difference between the greedy man and the spiritually enlightened saint is just the object they have placed at the center of their gravity.
Which leaves us with a final thought to pull apart, something for you to carry into your day long after this audio ends.
Always the best part.
We navigate a world designed to completely fracture our attention. We are bombarded by advertisements, notifications, and cultural pressures, all trying to manufacture these artificial hungers inside of us. But the text warns us, as is the hunger, so is the fulfiller.
It's a powerful warning.
It is. So if that inner knower, that searcher of hearts, were to audit your life right now, if it bypassed your stated goals and instead analyzed your daily habits, your screen time, the thoughts that keep you awake at 2 a.m., and the places where your attention helplessly drifts, what would it decide you are truly hungering for?
That's a tough question.
And more importantly, are you prepared to live in the reality the fulfiller is building for you in response?